Okay, so sheets, views in Revit. So I've got my what I call the tutorial model open on the main floor level. So hopefully yours looks something like this. If not, that's okay. We're still going to be able to get to the sheets. We can still develop the sheets simultaneous to developing the model. So for today, if we can walk through generating a couple different sheets and how to get a couple different views, and then we can get those views onto those sheets. So this is the model itself. We can see that the elevation markers are kind of just to the east and west. And that's really part of the views that we've got. We've got some elevation views, and then we've got some plan views, and we got a couple 3D views, but that's all we've got right now. So if I was to jump to our best in town reference drawing set, I think it's probably a good idea to start there to see, okay, step one, what are the views that I need and what are the sheets that I need? So if we just jump here, let's go to the best in town building reference set. What I might do, let's make this bigger. What I might do is say, okay, how many sheets total do I have? How many sheets total do I have? And in this case, I know that I've got one of 12 sheets. So I know I'm going to have to make 12 sheets worth of drawings. I got a title page sheet. I've got the basement floor level and so on, right? So there's all of these sheets that make up what's called a sheet set. And within these sheets, we've got a bunch of information. You should be able to see things like the project title, the drawing title, the client, some other things, and then our scale and our drawing number. So drawing number can be very important, bottom right-hand side of our drawings, to kind of indicate what are we looking at, right? So this whole title block can give us information about the drawing pretty quickly. And really, this is what we're going to try to get to today, a couple iterations of this. So yeah, we've got some plans, got some reflected ceiling plans. These are the RCPs. Got some elevations, some sections. We won't have the schedules for today, but we can make the sheet. And I want to be clear here. So we can make the sheet for the schedules without actually having the schedules done. And I would say that can get a little confusing. We can have a sheet. Just think of it like a little layout space for where we're going to put our final drawings once they're ready for prime time here. And then the last page, just a couple nice little 3D drawings here. So don't panic. We'll get through it. So let's get back into Revit. And if you've already generated some sheets, that's cool too. So just try your best to follow along with me. And what I'm going to start with is I'm just going to roll down, excuse me, I'm just going to roll down to our sheets here and delete that one. So we should see in our project browser, we've got some views. Remember, we can kind of hide some of these if we want to see further down. We got views, and then below that, we've got this little panel here that says schedules. Right now, that's empty. I have no sheets in this drawing. You may have one as a default if you've started as an architectural default page. I can't remember if it hosts one sheet in there. Regardless, that's cool. There's a couple different ways to get to sheets. My favorite way, the way that I usually do it, is you actually just right-click on schedules down here, and you're going to see oh, that's schedules, excuse me. Right click on sheets, get myself a little scare there. Right click on new sheet here, and this is the fastest way to get us to a new sheet. So right click on sheet, hit that new sheet button, and you should get, as expected, another menu. So let's click that, and then we'll see, excuse me, we've only got one title block inside of our default Revit model here, and that's an A1. It's an A1 metric standard family. There may be other types of sheet sets, of sheet types that you may use in the future office that you're going to be in. If you're running your own business, you might set up your own sheets. For us, for the best in town, all we're going to look at is this title block for A1. So a title block is just a place for information and where our drawings live. It is essentially the sheet. So if we hit OK here, we should see a brand new sheet here. So some things, this is our kind of, this is the title block itself. We can move this around. It's not really doing anything for us in terms of, there's no layout space as there was in AutoCAD, if you remember AutoCAD. Couple things here in our title block itself. We've got some information. So I went through a bit of it, but this is more about the interaction, the interactivity portion of it. So we could see obviously this big Autodesk thing. This is just so you don't go out and use this for your personal business. So we'd like to, maybe we can update that. The firm or the persons that you're working for might have their own title block, will have their own title block with some information about the company. Now, if we click on the sheet family itself, we'll see within our type selector over here on the left here, there's a couple different things that kind of get populated. We can see unnamed in the sheet name, the sheet number. Currently, mine says A002. Yours is probably going to say A001. That's okay. Sheet issue date. So this can be really important if you're tracking information. It gives us the ability, back to this idea of building information modeling, we can start to track how information is distributed. Drawn by, so drawn by the author, checked by. You may put names into these pieces. The way that we used to draw buildings, in the sheets, you would physically have someone come and check your sheets. You would physically have someone come and check your sheets as part of the exercise before the drawings went to a client or went to a contractor to make sure that they were quality assured. So our QA, QC process, quality control. So if I was to, for instance, I know if I just jump back to our best in town office example, if I just do the first sheet here, actually, you know what? Let's do the plan view. This is probably the simplest one to start with. So our little plan view, jump down here. What is some of the information we need to get in here, right? So some of the information is going to need, we want to get the project in here. We want to get the title of this drawing. We want to make sure it says owner. We want to make sure the scale is 1 to 100, and I'll show you something about that. And then we want to make sure that that drawing number is A100. So we know all this, we can get in there. So let's just jump back into Revit and we can populate our drawing with some of this information. So the project title, start with the project title. Oh, I've already named it for Best in Town. Apologies here. So what we can do is, if you don't have this, there's a way. You just kind of hover over our sheet and you can actually edit the parameter here. So I can call it Mike's house, right? I can call it Ram's cottage, right? And if you just hover and you click, and we're going to call this Best in Town. Yeah. Second thing, title. So for us, I know that I'm going to be calling this the basement. So you can, of course, modify these at any time as we start to populate the drawings. I just hover over, click a second time, hit enter. Owner, that looks cool. And then if we just hover over our drawing number and click once, and then click a second time, I believe this is going to be a 100. Just getting started, right? So as a second way, we can also edit some of this information within our instance parameters for the family type. So if I click on our family, our sheet family, you may want to come over here into the properties palette and modify our sheet name to say basement plan, for instance, and then hit apply, and then it's gonna populate with that new title. So there are a couple different ways that we can get at that information. My preferred, I leave it to you. There's a couple different ways we can do it. It's just to kind of hang out with it over here. Cool. So did I miss anything? Oh, I missed the scale, right? So I missed the scale. So you might be wondering, why is the scale not part of, why can't I edit it, right? So it used to be, again, back to this idea of AutoCAD and drawing by hand, was we would set the scale. We would set the scale inside of our sheet block, our sheet title, excuse me, our title block. So that in our sheets, we would have a total scale for the drawing that we're in. Because we're in Revit, this is all automated, so we don't have to think about it. And it also gives you the confidence that when you put a view onto a sheet, we're going to end up in a situation where the view is going to match the scale on the drawing, and there will never be any confusion. You'll never be able to cheat Revit into a different scale than is currently on the drawing. So why don't we go ahead and we will get one of our drawings onto this sheet. So one of our views onto this sheet. The reason that we call them views is you can see them over here in our project browser. We've got the views all, so all of our views, floor plans, ceiling plans, 3D views, elevations. We'll skip drafting views for now. Legends, and then schedules. So schedules we'll do tomorrow, but they're also views, right? So there's all these views inside of here. Views specifically, floor plans, ceiling plans, 3D views, all the way to drafting, and then legends is separate, but they do come into the sheets as views. Hit that little plus sign for me. We got our little, you can minus, plus, minus, make a little expanded list here. So for us, this is our A100 sheet. We are going to throw our basement floor level on here. And if you haven't had a chance to do this yet, pretty simple. I'm going to click on this. If you happen to double click, it's going to open up the sheet, the view, excuse me. It's going to open up the view. So if I double click basement floor level, whoops, automatically opens, right? We don't need to have the view open in order to place it on a sheet. So I can just close that. So what do I want to do? I want to kind of click once. Then I can click, hold, and drag that view onto the sheet. You can place it anywhere on the sheet. It's basically saying what is going to be the center of the view. And I'm just still holding. And if I release, it's going to give me a little preview. So you can see that it's basically at the center point of that view. We're going to try and place it somewhere in the middle here. Click once. Ta-da. Pretty cool, right? So now we've got this wonderful basement drawing inside of our sheet. And if we just come down to our scale, you should notice that the scale has been modified to 1 to 100. So 1 to 100 is the scale of this drawing. We can also see it again if you need to verify for yourself, give yourself peace of mind here. 1 to 100. Revit is taking things like the title of this view, it's taking it directly from the view label. So we've got this title basement floor level over here, and you can see it populate over here. So if I'm going to change anything from what it originally said, so if I wanted to say change basement floor level to something else, you're more than welcome to do that. So if I right click and I rename this to basement floor, for instance, we'll see what happens. So let's just delete this basement floor, hit enter. It's going to change a lot of stuff. So it's okay. I'm just giving you an example. It's going to change a lot of stuff. So it's going to say, would you like to change the view and the levels? So any levels that we've got in this instance are also going to change. The title on the drawing is also going to change. Our little title for right here is going to change. So let's just do that. I'm going to hit yes. Everything changes, but just be mindful that when you do something like this, it's not just going to change your the name of this view. It's going to change the name of the view, the name on the sheet, and it's also going to change the levels. So the level names in each of our sections and elevations and so on. So just to do that again and change it back to what it was, we can either do it in the floor plan rename, or we can in fact do it out here. Thought we could do it out here. Potentially cannot do it out here. So we have to do it inside the rename here. So that's good. That's good. So level. Hit enter, hit yes, good to go. Cool. So we've got this little view in here. If you just click on the view itself, we can kind of move it around. Right? You move it around. You can use all those move commands to move it, get it nice and tidy on the sheet. One thing I should mention is that right now I have nothing selected, and in our properties palette, we can see that we've got all the sheet information. So that's one thing. If I click on the view, we'll see the properties palette change to the viewport itself. So the viewport itself has some additional information in it. So we've got the view scale, the display mode, uh, parts visibility, that's okay. The number, so this will become important when we start to do things where we have more than one drawing on a sheet. The detail number, in this case, we've only got one drawing, but if we had three, then we would have to start naming rather numbering the number of sheets, the number of drawings that we have on a sheet. So we'd have to start numbering the number of drawings that we have on a sheet. So in this case, we've only got one drawing, so that's okay. We don't need to mess with the numbers. Visibility graphics we've talked about a little bit, but don't worry about that for now. Architectural, that's cool. And then a couple other things down here. Do we want to crop the view? Do we want to see the crop? Is there an annotation crop? The view range. These are more related to the overall view. You can set them inside of the view itself, or you can set them just by clicking on the view. Keep coming down here. So you can see a little bit of an echo here, an echo of those pieces that we saw in our original view. Click off of it. One thing I'm going to mention is that this is a relatively new function in Revit. If you are wondering if your drawing has been placed on a sheet, the reason that we'll see whether or not it's been placed on a sheet are these little squares. And we know that we've got the basement floor level on a sheet because it has this little blue filled in square. All right. Okay, next thing. So what do we say? We've got, we can do a couple things here. So you can either, again, this is essentially the same drawing. It is the same drawing as our basement floor level. So if I'm going to open up, why don't I just do this super quick? If we're going to open up our floor level, hanging out here, got our basement level with our sheet and the view of that basement level live. They are connected. They are the same drawing. So let's just do an example here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to change our view coarseness, the level of detail here. So let's change it to coarse. And then we should see it update immediately, simultaneously, the exact same time inside that sheet. So let's just do coarse here. Click, you can see our walls have now become gray with a thick line. So a sufficient change, right? A sufficient change. Let's jump back to the sheet. We should see all those changes, and we do. So just so you know, they are the same drawing. So once you've got this drawing, the view onto a sheet, they are still connected. There is nothing that separates them. So you can either, and this is, some people don't like this, so I'm going to give you what I've done in the past, but I know that best practice is to not draw within the sheet, but to do all of your work within your view and then print your sheets. So as time goes on, you'll know a little bit more about what I mean, but I'm going to show you the way that I typically do it, which is apparently not the way you're supposed to do it, but you can do it this way. They wouldn't let you do it unless you were able. So let's go ahead and let's make sure we swap this back to medium or fine. I think medium will also give us the detail we need for the best in town example. Yeah, we got a little insulation there in our basement, so that looks good. Jump back to the A100. So if you remember, so I did this in the 212 class, but if you haven't seen this before, we get, or if you just need a refresher, the way that we can get inside of the view, even though it's on a sheet, we can get inside of the view. And there's a couple different ways we can do that. We can actually double click, but the preferred way is to right click. And then we're going to see this little handy dandy activate view. So if I hit activate view, we'll see something will change and we'll see all together what happens here. So activate view, click that. Everything else grays out, right? So you can see I can no longer touch the sheet. I am now activated inside of our basement view. So I'm activated inside of our basement view. Um, if, for instance, I wanted to change things, these changes that I would make or will make, could make, are going to be reflected again inside of our basement floor level view, as well as in the view that exists on this sheet. Okay, so same thing. Let's just go and we're going to change this back to course, right? I'm doing the same thing. I'm just activated inside of the sheet view. Come back to here. Everything has been updated. One thing that used to drive me crazy when I was using Revit, so I'm going to explain it, is that it's really confusing how you might get out of this active view. And the simplest way is to likely right click and deactivate the view. And now we're back free. We know we're free because nothing is grayed out, right? Remember, we can activate view. Everything is now grayed out, but we're inside of the view itself. I'm going to swap this back to fine, make it look a little better. Okay. As a different version, if you don't want to right click and deactivate, you can double click outside the view box here, right? So double click that. And now we can see that we're back into the sheet space here because this has become not grayed out anymore. We're good to go. Okay, so next thing. So let's go ahead and maybe there's some things to do with the cropping of the view that we might want to do here. So cropping views means, much like in Instagram, much like in photographs, we can crop out the parts of maybe a drawing that we don't want to see. Maybe you've got something, way over here on the right side that, we don't want to see it. Maybe it's part of a parking lot. For this particular view, all we want to see is the floor plan. So for us, there's nothing outside of this view, so it doesn't really affect us too much. Excuse me. But if we were to modify some of these crops, we can see that right now inside of what I've done is I click on the view, and I can see right here in the extents portion of the properties palette, we can see there's a little crop view, there's a crop region visible, and there's an annotation crop. So personally, I don't like to see the crop region on my sheets. It will not print, so it won't print on your drawings, but let's just fire that up and we'll see what it looks like. So if I hit crop region visible, click that, and now we can see a little crop region. So this is the zone of influence. So this is really what Revit is saying. What would you like me to show on this sheet? And then the annotation crop, click this. We should see a little annotation crop as well. There it is. So, oh, you know what? I'll do that again because I realized that was probably too quick. Turn on crop region, turn on annotation crop. And what you can't really see them until you've activated the view. That's what I should have said. So you can't see them until you've activated the view. We right click, activate view, and then click on this little boundary here. This is our crop. So it's a quick way just to start to do things like crop our overall view. So the annotation crop is for, you guessed it, things like annotations. And the crop view itself will cut out the kind of physical geometry. So what we can do is we can kind of drag these controls, and you can see how we can cut off pieces of the model. Say we want to focus on the washroom, a little mechanical zone here, right? We can do that. And you can see that all of my grids have stayed, right? So that's really great, is all of my grids have stayed. And that's what that annotation crop does, is it's keeping our annotations active. I haven't done anything to the overall model. All of our stuff still exists inside the model. This is just creating a view that focuses on a different part, and we can crop out pieces of the overall building. Should mention that because we've done this crop also affects our basement floor level. So if you've done something inside the sheet to this view, you are going to end up messing up our basement floor level. So I don't want to say messing up, making adjustments to. So making adjustments to get it back. If you've got something and you're like, man, I don't know why this is doing it like this. I'm not sure what's going on. My view has been cropped. The tool here is to get into the view, and we can actually just drag this back to where it needs to be. Drag it down. Looking pretty good. Back in action. Okay, cool. So let's deactivate, or actually we can turn off these things now. We can keep that crop active. It doesn't really, do anything. So in our case, so what it would do is, as an example, it would, you know what, I should do that actually. Let's do that. Crop region visible. I'm just going to go back to what I did before. Let's click this, drag it a little bit. Say, for instance, I decided that I didn't want to crop this view. I could quickly click our little button here and it would uncrop it. So now you can see that crop view is active, crop view is inactive, right? You're likely not going to have that at the same time. You're likely going to set up the view crop at how you want to see it and then keep that crop view active. But we might not want to see the crop view region visible and the annotation crop visible. It can just get in the way, if I might. It should just get in the way of things like our dimensions. We just don't want to see all of those things. I have, for whatever reason, lost my grids. It's interesting. Usually that wouldn't happen. I'm not sure why that happened. Revit has some bugs even 20 years later. So interesting. So that is one of the sheets. Some other things. So if I just, I'm gonna undo that. If I'm gonna deactivate, so right click, deactivate. Some other things, we might want to move the actual title of our drawing here. So I always found this probably one of my biggest pet peeves about working in Revit was how confusing this can be. So in order to move our little title here, so we're actually going to click on it, and then we can click to drag, or we can move it using the move tool. We want to put it, above the drawing. For us, I believe it's just over here, somewhere around here. But then you'll notice this big, long line. So we got a long line here. Now it's causing more damage to the detail and the kind of the fidelity of this drawing. So you'd think, like a normal person, that I would just click on this and that would be cool. And I could just adjust the length. You're looking everywhere. Like where is the length of this line? You go into edit type. Okay, there's the line weight. There's the line pattern. There's all these things. But I can't adjust the overall length of this line. So lo and behold, this is probably one of the most counterintuitive things. I know I say that all the time about Revit, but to get this line shorter, we in fact need to click on the view itself. If I click on the view, we'll see this wonderful little drag point show up. What a stupid design, Revit. So click on this, and then we're actually going to click and drag our line. And that's it. I would just say that is unfortunately one of the most counterintuitive things in this software. If we click on the view itself, these little points will populate and we can drag them wherever we'd like. One other thing here is that we can actually adjust the little title line here. I've forgotten the physical name for it, the title, to something else. So say we don't want a title on this. If we click on our view, we can come over here to the properties palette and the type selector and drop down here. And we've got a couple different options. So we got a couple different options here. Say, for instance, you don't want to have the title on the drawing. We can just say no title. So if you step into a drawing for whatever reason and there's no title on the drawing, perhaps there's a reason why the person before you or the person in a previous life said no title. But if you'd like to have one, we can do title no line, right? So now we have no line. We can do title no line with a detail reference, right? So the detail reference is the detail number of the drawing. In this case, there's only one drawing, so it's one. If there were more than one drawings, we would have 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then title with line, which is probably the most common one that I see on drawings, which is why it's on our best in town office example. If I just jump here, oh, look at that. I've got it in the wrong location. So we're just going to drag this, click and click, hold, and bring it down to the bottom left there. Trying to think if I missed anything. I think that that's going to cover us for the plan views. And now what I'd like to do is jump to some sections. So maybe what we can do is some sections, or maybe we can start with the elevations. Actually, let's start with the elevations. What do we got here? So let's jump to our little couple of views here. So I think elevations are first in our set here. So we got A200. So A200 is representative of, based on the AIA standards, we've got some elevations in here. You can see that there are four, so 1, 2, 3, 4. You might be asking yourselves, why does it go in reverse order? This is standard convention. So standard convention is that you're going to work your way from the bottom right to the top left when we number 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just a standard convention. We don't have to argue about it. It's just what it is. Logic doesn't apply sometimes. The reasoning for it that I understand is when you are looking through a set of drawings, you're usually starting on the right-hand side of the page when you go to open a set of drawings, right? You're always looking at the very right-hand side of the page, much like you would look for a page number. And then as you kind of unfold the documents, you unfold the drawings, you're going to get more information moving. Your eye moves from bottom right of the page to the top left. A little bit different than a standard book, but this is just how it goes. We're so used to reading in Canada, we're so used to reading, I shouldn't say in Canada, in English, we're so used to reading from top left to bottom right. And in all sorts of other languages all over the world, they read right to left, up to down to, so it's not that different. It's just where we're at. So start labeling bottom right to the top left. Simplest way to think about it. So let's get some drawings on a sheet. So jump back in here. How do we get some more sheets? So we know that we're going to do a new sheet. We're going to get some elevations on there. So let's jump to the sheets here, right click, new sheet, hit OK. Have a blank sheet. If you are generating multiple sheets in a row, you'll notice that Revit has automatically said, you just generated, I noticed you just generated A100. I've gone ahead and decided that you're also going to need an A101. Just happens to be the next number in sequence. This can be really helpful if you're generating multiple sheets, 101, 102, and so forth. For us, I just want to start us on the path of getting some of these elevations onto the sheets. So why don't we just go ahead and do that? So that is going to be, I think I said A200, make sure, A200. It's going to be elevations, right? Is that it? That's it. That's really all we need to change for right now. And if we remember back on our main floor level, we've started the process. It comes pre-baked in. We've started the process of we've got these little elevation markers in here. So elevation marker, 1, 2, 3, 4, north, east, southwest. And now what we can do is we can get these elevations onto the sheet. So if I was going to do this, let's look at the order here. So we start with the south, go to the north, then the east, then the west. And I'm going to start using it that way. We won't have our topo solid yet drawn. So the topo solid is this kind of zone down here, but that's okay. For now, we're just going to get the views onto the sheets, and then we can update that at a later time. Let's go ahead and do that. So what do we need to do? Go to the elevations here. Let's go to our 200 sheet. We can also double click. So double click in the project browser to bring us to, say you close it. Let's double click A200. It's going to populate. I've already forgotten what I said. I think it's south north. South north. So we can jump over here into our views, little elevations down here. You can see here they're already done. They're already done out of the box. And in this case, we won't. I don't think we're going to have to make any modifications, but we'll go through the modifications if we do need to make them. So very similarly, we are going to click, hold, and drag the view onto the sheet. When you release it, we'll have a little kind of highlight here. Where do you want to put it? We're going to get close. It does not have to be perfect. I just want you to demonstrate that we can get these views onto these sheets. So click once, and it should populate. You can see here we've got the above grade stuff, and then we have the below grade, the main floor level and below. So this is actually our foundation wall kind of showing up here. In this case, I've already got the shadows turned on, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but why don't we just get the drawings onto the sheets first, and then I'll show you how to turn on those shadows. Step one, south elevation. Get the north elevation on here. You can see that Revit is going to want to snap. So if I just kind of hover, and then it pulls the elevation view right into line. So right into line here. Get close, click, and then we've got, I think it was east and west, but let's just double check in here. East, come up here, around here somewhere, and then west. We should. You'll notice, so got the east one in there. You'll notice when I bring in the west one, similarly, I've got this blue dashed line. And this blue dashed line is saying, realistically, you're going to want to line up our levels. So the levels for the main floor, basement floor level, and roof level, we'd like to be in a line, right? So if I was to drag our little west elevation down across to our north, we should have the same thing. So you can see how this line, this dashed line emerges. Revit is smart enough to say, it looks like you're trying to put things in line. So this can be really handy if we've got drawings that are of a similar view. And in this case, we've got elevations, similar views, and we're going to snap right to that main floor level. So let's click, and we should see it. You can see how it's lined up perfectly with the main floor level. Perfect, right? All good. So some key things here, very similar to our other views. If you're finding some challenges with the way that the crop is working, if you'd like to crop some of the view, if Revit is not behaving, if you've got things outside of this view, say you've thrown some trees in there, you do not have to put trees in there, but say you've got some trees in your view that you wanted to crop out, we can right click, activate that view. And in this case, we've got the crop view already turned on, and crop view, crop region visible, and you can make modifications. Say we wanted to show more of our, we didn't get to this in class, but more of our elevator foundation wall here. So let's not worry about that right now. But say, for instance, we only wanted to focus on a certain portion of the building. You know, maybe we just want to look at one of our windows, for example. We can actually go ahead and crop that view, right? So we're cropping the view using our little drags out here. I'm going to drag it back to where it was-ish. Perfect. Yeah, and if I wanted to turn these off, very similarly, it's going to click those inside of the properties palette, and now they're no longer visible, but they are active. Just because we're here, I think that if you would like to turn on shadows, I realize I've got shadows on, so should probably make sure that everybody knows how to use this tool. Right down here in our kind of, I forget what this is called, but on the bottom left of our view panel here, we've got a couple extra tools. We've got our coarse, medium, fine. I don't think we're going to see any changes here. Coarse, medium, fine. If for whatever reason you've got wireframe on, I did see this in the last class. There were quite a few people who had wireframe. If that's your preferred way of modeling, that's totally fine. But when we're getting the drawings onto sheets, it's good to kind of make sure we've got either hidden line or one of the other types on here. And I'll show you what a wireframe elevation looks like, right? So wireframe elevation can be great to kind of X-ray to see inside of our building. We can see all of the components. So the wireframe is, we don't have any solid, I don't want to say geometry, that's not right. But the hidden line, essentially what it does is it only shows you the things that are in view and nothing beyond what would be opaque. So for us, that's going to be things like walls. It should show us things that are beyond windows. But if we just jump back to hidden line, that's cool. And then a couple other things. So sun path, leave that off. But shadows, so this is my little shadows toggle. So I can toggle that off and on. Wonderful. Okay. So that is the elevation view. I should mention that back to the idea of being able to change the scales. So similarly for our elevation view, all of these elevations are the same. They should be 1 to 100 scale. So all of our floor plans are 1 to 100, and then all of our elevations are 1 to 100. So we will see this scale populate with a 1 to 100 for this sheet. So all 1 to 100s. If I was to change this to say a different scale, I can do it again. I can do it within the view itself. So if I jump to the west, whoops, let's jump to the south actually. Jump to the south elevation. I can change my scale here. And if I change that scale to, let's call it 1 to 200, change that up here. We can change that to 1 to 200. You can see everything kind of grows. All our annotation grows in scale. You'll see down here, it's also changing 1 to 200. And then if I jump back to our sheet, whoops, right? Whoops. So we can see here, I just want to show you this because we can see here that our scale has jumped from 1 to 100 to 1 to 200. And then over here on the right, it's going to say scale as indicated, just so we know that Revit is doing its job to say scales as you indicated in the detail of the drawing, but maybe not what we want. So what I can do is I can either do it again within the view itself, or I can do it here. I can do it right here inside of our viewport, and I can change this to 1 to 100, and everything's back to normal. Just double check with our best in town PDF here. I think we're probably interested in, again, reducing these lines, right? So it seems to be a common thread here. Yes. So what we would want to do, remember we click on the viewport, see this little drag here, move it across, and we can just do the same thing. You can see Revit is going to want to snap. So it's snapping to that little blue line there. So that's cool if you want to do it that way. Give ourselves a little bit of shorter lines. And that would be what I would argue is looking like a pretty good elevation view. You know, like I realized back to the point of the topo solids is not currently there. We'll do that last. But it will populate as we kind of enter it into the overall model interface. You will notice, so the elevations over here on the left, we've got all these blue squares have been activated. So we know that all of these views are now on sheets. Looking pretty good. Last but certainly not least, for today, I'd like to get, you know what, actually, I'll probably do the 3D. So this might be a little bit of an extended one if you guys have the time. I want to get some of our section views onto some sheets. So that might be the next step here. And if we do jump to our ARC 252 best in town, one thing I should mention before we get to sections is what happens with the elevation markers. However, we will do a couple sections here, and let's see if we can get those onto our drawings. So what we're looking for in this case, we've got a little section here, a little section over here. And what I'll do is I'll see if I can get 2 of these done, and then I would leave it to you guys to do some of those other sections themselves. But before we get to that, I should point out that we should see, because we've now got those elevations are now on sheets. We should see inside of Revit, if we jump back to our main floor level, it's been updated, right? So a friend of mine used to argue that the annotations alone inside of Revit save you so much time. So what ends up happening here is that we have the detail number, which is 2, and the sheet number A200 are all happening in real time, right? So if I come back to our A200 elevations, I know that the north elevation is located on drawing 2 on sheet 200. Perfect, right? 2 on 200. If I was to change our detail number here to 500 or whatever, doesn't matter, 500, what do you think happens? We're going to jump back to the main floor level, drawing 500 on A200. This makes it bulletproof. This makes it so that all of the views that we set up will always be properly referenced, and we reference these using these numbers, right? So this is a cross-reference, a way to guide a contractor, a way to guide your client through the drawing set. And sometimes what will happen is in a previous version of this, you would have what are called broken references. So this might say, I won't be able to change it. So I thought I could change it here, but I can't. Oh, I can. So change it from, this might say 2, and then on our actual sheet, this says 4, and it's not quite right, right? So Revit makes it such that we can't make those kinds of, what I would say is a mistake, but those types of mistakes. So Revit makes you pretty bulletproof when it comes to drawing referencing. Really hard to mess around and get the wrong reference because things are done live. So similarly, let's get a couple of section views set up. So if you don't remember how to do section views, I would suggest that we start in a plan view. Doesn't matter which plan view, but I think that our final kind of zone of influence here, we're going to want to get some sections that look like page 8. So some page 8 sections here. These are the overall building sections. So let's do that. And let's get maybe our overall building section 1 here, cut through the fire stair and then through the elevators. So maybe we can start with that one and see how far we can get. Jump to, it's probably actually simpler for me. I understand where it is, but it's probably simpler for us to follow along so we can see exactly where. So just below grid line B, we have this section 1, 301. So let's actually we'll do this one. And if we jump back into Revit here, there's a couple different ways we can draw this section. So there is, of course, the quick access toolbar. We've got section tool up here. So the section command. We've also got inside of view, we have the section command. So we can see section here as well in our create panel. It's up to you. They do the same thing. You can decide to draw sections how you prefer. We should see no sections currently in our project browser. So if you're like, man, where are my sections? It's because you haven't drawn any yet. And how we do that is by either, again, quick access toolbar, we see sections up here, or the section down here. They do the same thing. So let's click on section tool. And now we've got in our little properties palette, currently we only have building sections, which is fine. In other projects, you might have wall sections set up. You might have, I'm trying to think of other examples, detail sections. You might have ceiling detail sections. Don't worry about that right now. I'm just giving you some examples that might be built into a template that you're using in the future. So for us right now, we're only focused on doing a couple building sections here. And so what you're going to do is make sure that's selected, building section. And now, the easy part. So where do we want to cut our section? We are going to draw essentially a line through the whole drawing. So we want to cut through here, roughly. I can't remember if it cuts through the window. Let's just double check that. Does it cut through the window? It does not. So that's cool. It's going to cut somewhere around here. So we're going to click once and then drag. You can see kind of in real time, drag our section all the way across our drawing, and then click again. Immediately, happened so fast you probably didn't see it. We've got a section. So there's a little section box that's emerged inside of our project browser. And if we just drop that open, we see section 1. So section 1 has now been populated. It is this section. It's not on a sheet yet. We know that it's not on a sheet because it's an empty box. So a couple things about the actual section itself. So if I was to go ahead and just click on this section, we've got, again, some information in here. We've got, we can set the view scale, we can set the display mode, we can set the detail level. Before we've even opened up the view, we can do all of these things inside of the section. A couple things just to cover are the extent of the section. So our little drag here will control the kind of, again, the zone of influence. How much of the view would we like to keep? How much of the view of this section would we like to keep? We can either keep, you know what, why don't I open up two views simultaneously here? Let's do it this way so you can see what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and open up this section. So let's do it this way. So, and then this is where things like our tiling can come in place, come and help us out here. So tile views. So come out to our view, Windows panel, tile view. And this is where we might want to start to see these things simultaneously. So inside of our main floor level, if I click on our section view here, we can see that there are certain things inside of our section that are captured within this kind of dashed blue box, right? So if I was to do something like pull this drag down, we can see right now we're seeing all the way to the windows. We can see all the way to the windows on the other side of the room. If I pull this just short of the windows and say I stop around where the chairs are, we no longer see the windows, right? So this is controlling how far the section into the space can see. So if I do a nice tight section here, all the way really, I'll just hanging out with the landing. We're only going to see the landing and the stair. We're going to see it cutting through the desks. We're going to see it cutting through the ceiling. You can see the ceiling here. But yeah, so we can control that just so you can see a little bit about that. Some other things we can do if, whoops, I did one thing. I'll have to come back and show you. Another thing we can do is we can move the section in real time. So say you, for whatever reason, you'd like to see a different part. You just want to kind of mess around and you're cutting this section. You can modify that again in real time. And I can just move this up. I can also, sorry, I should do the move command here. So I can move our section up to somewhere else in the building. So this can be really handy if we wanted to see different parts of the building. For us, we're just interested in the kind of section cut through the stair and the elevator core here. And that's probably going to do us pretty good for now. The other part of the drag here is that we can actually drag the section marker. Just keep in mind that once I release this, I'm clicking and dragging. Once I release this, it's going to cut instead of at going to cut it starting where my kind of this vertical dashed blue line is. If I release, you can see how it's starting to edit our crop, right? So you can see how it's starting to edit our crop as I move my drag here. We can just drag it all the way back out, but it is something to keep in mind when we're doing these sections that it might be something that you might want to do, you might not want to do. The other thing we do is we can flip the direction that the section is looking. So currently we are cutting a section east-west and looking north. Let's say we wanted to cut an east-west section looking the other way, so looking south. Rather than redrawing the section, we can actually just tap this little flip section arrow. And now we are in fact looking south. Pretty handy, pretty great. If you've done all this work and you'd like to kind of reverse the section, we can do it that way. I'm going to make sure that we're looking north there. Um, yeah, in terms of trying to keep the drawing fidelity up. So I know in our example, we've got a little bit more fine detail in here. So we can change that from the menu. If I click on the section, we can change that from coarse here to fine. We can do it there. Or we can change it inside the view here for our section one from coarse to fine. So again, everything is connected. I hear that it's really hard to kind of remember all that, but good to do, good to mess around with, good to experiment. And if I did want to kind of come back into just looking at the floor plan here, there's one other kind of tool I wanted to go over is let's do that, make this big. I got a tile views, tab views. Couple other things. So say for instance, I don't want the bubble. So this is our little detail bubble. I don't want the bubble on the left side of the drawing. I want it on the right side. You can see this little circular cycle change ahead. And what we'll do here is if we click this once, it will change to the other symbol that's built into the family. But now, in fact, we have no reference. So I would just be careful with how, if you were just to leave this, we would have no reference to what drawing this was. Got the head, we got the tail, and then we would come over here to the right side of the page and change this, click again, and we'll have our head at the right piece here. So a couple other things, if you want to clean up your drawing, say you've got some dimensions in the way, we can actually just use this little drag here, click, drag, release, and we can move that around. Back over here, click, drag, release. You can kind of hang out with it. And then one thing you might notice in the Best in Town reference set of drawings is, and this is just for drawing fidelity, again, trying to keep drawings clean, is that there's a long single line that extends all the way across the page here. And we might not want to see that in our drawing set. So what we can do is we can actually just click our little lightning bolt. And now it's broken the overall section line, but we've got these little drags here. We can click, hold, and drag them to where we want. Yeah, so that's the section. If we wanted to identify very quickly, sometimes what will happen is if you've got 600 sections, it might be really difficult to identify what section this is. For us, it's pretty simple. We've only got one currently in the drawing. So if we scroll down, we'll see in the view name section one, we can come down here to our sections. We've got section one. But if that's too difficult, another thing we can do is right click and go to view. So if we right click and go to the view, it's going to open up the live view of that section and give us a little bit more information. So go to view, click that, and now we've got a little bit of our view set up, right? So again, partially set up. You might want to do things like modify what side of our drawing has the bubbles on. So best practice is to keep your bubbles for your level datums on the right-hand side of the sheet. Because again, back to the idea of somebody looking at these drawings, they're going to be starting on the right side and they're going to kind of be flipping through and they want to see what the levels are on the right side. Sections. Last thing I'll do for this session is I'll just throw these sections, this one section onto a sheet, and I'll have to do a follow-up tutorial here. I ran out of time. So what we'll do is let's create a third sheet. And I think it's going to be either 300 or 400. Let's just double check. 301. So let's generate a little A301 sheet. So A301 sheet. Let's do that inside of Revit here. Right click, new sheet, title blocks, A1 metric, hit OK. We could see again, Revit is smart enough to know we would like to have the next in line. So A200 goes to A201. Let's just go ahead and make this A301. I think this is something like building sections. I think so. Let's double check that. Building sections, perfect. And now we're going to just Same thing, we're going to get that section view onto this sheet. Very similarly, we're going to click, hold, and drag, and then drop it onto the sheet. Where did it go? Oh, whoops, excuse me. Trying to drag the sheet onto the sheet. Revit doesn't want me to do that. What a goof. Let's go up to sections. Excuse me. So just because this was highlighted, that's my mistake. So double click on our building sections. We've got the sheet open, and then we're actually going to come over here to our sections, our section views. You can see that the square here is empty. And if we click, hold, and drag, we should see a wonderful blue box kind of emerge here. And if we just hover, we can kind of move it where we need to, kind of preliminary placement, click once. We should have that view populated looking something like this. I realize we didn't do all of this work with the elevators, but it should be something like this hanging out. And yeah, so that would be another thing just to get onto our sheet. What else do we have here? Definitely some additional annotation there, which I encourage you to get, what you can get done. But one thing that we should look at is what happens with the title here of our drawing. So let's, what do we call it? I think it's probably elevator and stair section. Let's just relabel that. Elevator, stair section, and then we'll move our line across. Again, it's set to 1 to 100. You can modify that to whatever you need to do in a future iteration. For us, we're going to keep these at 1 to 100 for now. And that is how you get section drawings onto the sheets. Again, our blue box has been populated, so we know it exists on a sheet. If we jump back up to our main floor level, we should see an updated reference, drawing 1 on A301. Perfect, that's what we want to see. And yeah, I might pause here and I'll have to come back with a part 2. I think this was a good start, but I do know that we have some additional views that we need to set up. So we did the floor plans, we did the elevations, and we started doing sections. So if we were just to go back to our reference set here, we started doing the sections. So what I'd like to do in a future tutorial, which I'll try and do for the end of today, is get to these additional callouts. So this is going to be, we're going to make our overall building section, and then we're actually going to have to do a additional callout here. And then I'm also going to do one just to kind of show us how to get 3D views onto sheets. I know we've got a couple 3D views here that I haven't covered. So especially at the end here, if we don't know how to set these up, I'll just walk us through the process of getting those views set up and then onto sheets. That being said, I appreciate all of you guys being here. And what we'll do is I will do my best to get that out by the end of the day. I will put this recording up very shortly if you want to come back and check it out if I went too quickly over things. And then the second piece I'll try and release almost immediately by the end of today. And then tomorrow we can jump into schedules and see how far we can get with our wall tags. So that being said, I appreciate, hey Isaiah, I didn't know you guys all dropped in here, so I appreciate everybody being here. Let's maybe we'll pause here and I'll come back tomorrow, be hanging out with you guys. So if you do have questions, I know we got a kind of Friday deadline here. So I think what I might do is you guys will be the first to know is that I'll extend that deadline. If it's helpful, you're free to submit all the way on to Sunday. I think that the space is probably going to be helpful. I know how deadlines work. Not that Sunday is ideal either, but if you do need a couple extra days here to get the work done, that would be great. So that being said, thank you everybody for hanging out, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank